Hello everyone, it's me, Clayton, and I just got back from seeing Cars 3. Now when it comes to the Cars franchise, you can say that out of all the Pixar franchises, that's my least favorite. The first Cars film I thought was fairly generic in both its plot and its characters, and the second film, while it tried to be different, ended up being a very poorly done spy parody done with the most annoying character in the franchise. The franchise isn't home on the range bad, but it just felt like it was a cynical cash grab that only was there to sell toys. But with this film, it feels like it's the first film in this franchise to be here for a reason other than to sell toys, and as such, it feels like the first film in the franchise to be worthy of being animated by Pixar. But let's get to the story, shall we? Lightning McQueen, played by Owen Wilson, has now become an aged veteran, and the next generation of sports cars has come into the forefront, taking out old veterans left and right. And after Lightning McQueen ends up in a big crash during one of his races that could potentially end his career, after facing a next generation racer named Jackson Storm, played by Armie Hammer, he ends up trying to get himself back into the game with the help of a new manager named Sterling and a new racing trainer named Cruz Ramirez. All the while, he remembers some old teachings from Doc Hudson, who you might remember from the first film, voiced with audio recordings from the late Paul Newman. And as such, he thinks he might have one last shot to get back in the game. Now, it's pretty obvious that this movie's moral and its overlying message is more about aging athletes. That in many respects, this is a sport where it can affect people who age, just like any sport. In a similar fashion to another sports film that I really love, The Wrestler, the reason that this message works is because it can be done with any profession where your age can become a liability. And doing it with the Cars franchise, a franchise that was already running on fumes, see what I did there? It really makes sense to use this kind of message, as it actually does give some dramatic heft to the proceedings, and it doesn't feel like just a well-animated cash grab. As such, even though Lightning McQueen isn't the most interesting character that Pixar's ever created, he feels like he's more in depth here, considering that Owen Wilson does a perfect, wait, now I'm one of the old guys kind of performance, where he still feels like the prideful rookie that we remember him as, but now he's a bit older, yet without him fully realizing it. Also, Christy Alonso does a great job as Cruz Ramirez, and let's just say that what they do with her in the film actually makes me excited for a possible Cars 4 if they're planning on going in that direction. Though, given how much money these films make, it's more than likely. And another thing that I have to praise about this film is the animation. I mean, Pixar's always been absolutely incredible with the animation, but here the environments in particular are almost photorealistic to the point where sometimes the cartoony cars look a tiny bit out of place with the environment, but it's not distracting. The animation overall is very well detailed, stylish, and it does do a great job to add to the proceedings of the film. It's also interesting how this film does a good job showing both the positive and negative sides of the progression of sports, where neither the new rookies or the old veterans are seen as completely right or completely wrong, even though the majority of the focus is taken to the old vets. I'll go over that when I go over the cons of the film. Last thing that I'll say that I enjoyed was the fact that several characters that I found annoying from the first film, like Tow Mater, played by Larry the freaking Cable Guy, were given significantly less screen time. I mean, they're still there, and they're still the one-note characters they are, but thankfully more time is given to the characters we care about, and less time is given to these fairly Hollywood cliche characters. But, of course, this is not a perfect film by any means, and one of the biggest problems I had with the film was the fact that Jackson Storm. Now, Armie Hammer gives a good performance. It's kind of the most he could do with the script he was given, but at the same time, Jackson Storm doesn't have a lot to him, as he's basically just a one-dimensional bully who thinks he's the best. You know, just sort of like a typical 80s or 90s sports film villain. And like I said, it feels like the focus of the film is a bit one-sided in some cases, We see a lot of the old veterans of the sport, but we see very little, and we get little depth for the new rookies who come in. The little tidbits we get are interesting, but it seems like the film is more focused on Lightning McQueen's crisis of aging in this sport, rather than showing how this world of Cars has evolved. Also, the writing, while it has improved significantly in this series, it still has a few quirks that I'm not fully down with. Like, the car puns are still not very funny, the humor in general is sort of hit and miss throughout, and even though I do appreciate that this film treats its audience with a bit more maturity, it does not treat them with the same maturity as films like, say, Up or Toy Story, or heck, even films like Brave. It's clear to me that Cars is still the least interesting franchise in this Pixar universe we have. But for what it's worth, Cars 3 is a legitimately good movie that happens to rise above its predecessors. So, overall, this is a good movie, though it is kind of odd how the short film that came beforehand, a short called Lou, which is very inventive and very creative, I found more enjoyment from that short than I did with this movie. But that's more to compliment the short. You'll definitely love it when you see the movie. Anyways, I give Cars 3 a 7.5 out of 10. See you next time.